You really ought to wait and to hear what I have to say first before you get too enthusiastic.
The King, in giving his Commonwealth Day speech, his first ever as monarch, was of course significant, not least because the Commonwealth is something that was so closely associated with his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II.
In succeeding Her Majesty as head of the Commonwealth, I draw great strength from her example, together with all that I have learnt from the extraordinary people I have met throughout the Commonwealth over so many years.
There's long been a question mark over whether Charles III can continue his late mother's mantle when it comes to keeping this group of countries together and for the Commonwealth to still thrive in the future. But of course there are challenges for King Charles as he moves forward as head of the Commonwealth. He gave a speech at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali last year where he talked about how it was beholden on him as a member of the royal family to sort of make apologies for slavery. And we've seen in the past, particularly when royals have visited Commonwealth countries such as the Caribbean, when the Prince and Princess of Wales went, that actually...
He needs to say something, yeah. Like, his family is responsible for all of the slavery that's going on here, you know, that used to be here.
There are some tensions over the royals and their link to Commonwealth countries, which in turn feel that they have a kind of tortured colonial past.
There are issues here which are, as you would know, unresolved.
As a result of the sort of white privilege that is associated with the Empire and Imperial Britain.
We are moving on, and we intend to fulfill our true ambitions and destiny as an independent, developed, prosperous country.
And therefore I think the approach is very much going to be to leave less unsaid. I think while she was on the throne, the late Queen was almost sort of on a pedestal and considered to be a champion of the Commonwealth and respected for her wealth of wisdom and experience, and the fact that she was the most travelled monarch in British history, in fact probably in all history, spoke to her soft power status of someone who could go out and champion the Commonwealth and make sure that the country's key causes were kind of promoted around the world thanks to royal tours.
Unlike the last occasion on which we gathered for dinner in Britannia, I'm delighted to see you all here on time and in good order.
She was almost kept in a kind of protected category. You had countries that were flirting with the idea of republicanism, basically holding their counsel while the Queen was still on the throne because they didn't want to be disrespectful towards her. Whether that changes with the King remains to be seen. He certainly isn't the kind of universally popular figure that his late mother was, and that poses problems because actually in order to have a republic you need probably public support. It didn't happen like that in Barbados. The decision was taken by politicians and that was controversial in itself. But actually if you turn around and you ask, for instance, the Canadians or the Australians whether they would be more inclined to have a republic now that the Queen's no longer with us, some of them will probably say yes, and they might not have said that 10 or 20 years ago. But that doesn't mean that the royals don't need to go and visit these countries, press the flesh, and kind of reaffirm these Commonwealth countries' relationship with the royals. The royals don't really have any control over countries like Barbados turning around and saying, no, we don't want to have a monarch as head of state. We'd like to go independent. We'd like to become a republic.
I think that His Royal Highness's visit tonight when he comes in and his participation in the handover ceremony and the being present at the installation of the President sends the message to the rest of the world that we shall continue to be family, we shall continue to be good friends, but we must do so from a position where our people can aspire to be the best that they can be.
Actually, the popularity of the Commonwealth as an organisation, as a group of countries, has grown. Its membership has increased in recent years. And why is that? Well, geopolitically, it probably makes quite a lot of sense to be part of a gang. If you're not in Europe, but you want to be members of a kind of organisation that has mutual interests, that's probably a good thing to do in light of the growing threat from Russia and indeed China. That then does make it interesting as to why the King and Queen Consort have decided for their first royal tour as a monarch and his wife to then go to Europe rather than a Commonwealth country. They're travelling to Germany, they're going to spend 6 days there, they're going to be pressing the flesh with a lot of European leaders. The King and the Queen Consort are due to make an appearance at the Brandenburg Gate, which is going to break history. It's a very European-focused tour. That could be because there's the small matter of a coronation coming on May the 6th, and actually the idea of them taking a long-haul trip when there's so much planning going on in London around that extended bank holiday weekend of events. They could hardly start going to Australia for a week. It would probably be a bit disruptive when we've got the royal event of arguably this century fast approaching. Why Europe? Well, again, there must be a Brexit factor in that. If you look at the fact that the King insisted on this meeting with Ursula von der Leyen when she came over for the signing of the Brexit deal between her and Rishi Sunak and the wider UK and Brussels picture, he was very welcoming towards the European Commission President at Windsor Castle. Charles has had a history of addressing the European Parliament. He did so in 2008, talked about climate change. I think thinks that he can get a lot of cooperation from Europe as a whole on that particular issue. Now he's king, he can't be political, but I think in his mind he thinks it's a good idea to keep France and Germany close. That's been echoed by Rishi Sunak in recent weeks because of course he's been with Emmanuel Macron to try and solve this migrant crisis.
Thank you.
All of these trips happen for a reason, and they're largely because on behalf of UK PLC, there's this notion that the royals pack a good soft power punch, that they can help kind of smooth the lines of bilateral and political negotiations between different world leaders. The onus is on the King and Queen Consort to do quite a lot of Commonwealth travel, and they are both in their mid-70s, which is why there's also a burden on the likes of the Prince and Princess of Wales to carry out some of these long-haul trips just because they've got youthfulness on their side. Also, Camilla famously hates flying, so it's not her ideal set of circumstances to be on a plane to Australia for 24 hours, but obviously she does it in the name of duty. But also there's an absence, isn't there? The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, who were being lined up to be these champions of the Commonwealth, are no longer members of the royal family in a working sense, and they're over in the US, which again creates a vacancy. So you'll no doubt remember that they went to Africa, they went to Canada, they went to Australia while they were still working royals, and there was a good reason for that because they were seen as the key countries to visit in order to sort of keep those royal relations flowing. But I think there is this sense to which certainly our Foreign Office and the royal household must be anxious about our relationship with the Commonwealth deteriorating now that the Queen is gone, simply because she was the Queen of the Commonwealth, synonymous with those nations, synonymous with the growth of that organisation. And I think it is fair to say, and not too unfair to say to the King, that actually Queen Elizabeth II's popularity was more or less unparalleled in the Commonwealth, and it's, at the end of the day, as with all things with the late Queen, they are big shoes to fill.